Dinner used to be neutral ground. Not warm, not joyful, but at least neutral. A place where plates met wood, where conversations hovered in safe, shallow waters. Nothing personal, just functional. The way most things become when the glue between people starts to rot. That night, though, something felt different. I noticed it when I set the table. The way the silverware didn't line up. The way Laura didn't bother lighting the candle she always lit. The way Evan and Mia entered the room without acknowledging me. As if this house had arranged itself. As if dinner simply happened without a pair of hands to make it so. They sat. Not waiting. Not thanking. Just taking. I was halfway through my first bite when it came. No warning. No wind-up. "You're nobody here." Evan said it like he was commenting on the weather. Not a hint of malice. Just certainty. Like he was explaining something I should have already known. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed. Heavy. Sharp. Clean. I didn't look at him. I didn't respond right away. I looked at Laura. Calm. Steady. Still slicing her roast chicken like she hadn't just heard her son speak a burial sentence. Then Mia. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask him to take it back. She smirked. Not wide. Just a twitch at the corner of her mouth, the kind that teenage girls weaponize when they know they've won. She leaned forward slightly and tilted her head. "Placeholder," she said. "That's what you are. Just a warm body holding a place that doesn't belong to you." I looked at Laura again. No twitch. No scolding. Just a slow, deliberate nod. And then, she opened her mouth and said the line that ended the performance. "As long as you remember your role," she said, tone even, eyes still on her plate. "There won't be any problems. You pay the bills. That's how this family works." No venom. No smirk. Just truth. That was the moment of clarity. Not because it surprised me, but because, for the first time, I stopped lying to myself. The kids weren't acting out. They weren't being cruel. They were expressing the rules they'd been taught. Subtly. Over years. In glances. In silences. This was the script. And Laura was its author. She didn't need to defend me, because she didn't disagree. I was the provider. Not the man of the house. Not the father. Not the partner. Just the scaffold holding up a structure that was never mine. I thought of the mortgage payments, the ones that never came from her account, because her account was always mysteriously light when the first rolled around. I thought of the tuition statements I paid without being asked, the ones they never saw fit to thank me for. I thought of the way birthdays were always a parade of demands and cold glances. No matter how carefully I listened, no matter how much I tried to anticipate what would make them feel seen. But more than anything, I thought of the dinners. The ones where I grilled while they sat on their phones. The ones where I cleared the plates while Laura scrolled through her laptop. The ones where I tried to start a conversation and got one-word answers, and she never stepped in to help carry the weight. I used to think they were just distant, that the bond would grow in time, that consistency would be enough. But consistency without respect isn't love. It's labor, and I had been laboring. For years. Quietly. Desperately. Stupidly. Evan reached for the potatoes like nothing had happened. Mia poured herself more water. That was the moment I realized I was already gone. They just never bothered to tell me. I stared at Laura again. She met my eyes finally. And I swear, there was something like pity there. But not for me. For herself. For the inconvenience of a man whose usefulness had run its course. She had stopped pretending a long time ago. I just hadn't noticed. I put my fork down. The plate was still half full. My appetite was gone. "I see," I said. My voice didn't shake. Mia raised an eyebrow, waiting for a response that never came. Evan stayed focused on his food. I rose, took my plate to the sink, rinsed it off and set it down like any other night. No shaking hands. No slammed doors. No dramatic monologue. I walked past them down the hallway. I passed the framed photos of a family I was never part of. Laura in a sun hat. Evan with a plastic sword. Mia mid-laugh at a beach I hadn't been invited to. Photos that had been there before me and would still be there after. I stepped into the guest room and closed the door. Not hard. Not soft, just closed. And in the silence that followed, I made the quiet decision that had been circling me for months. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't defend myself. I wouldn't explain. The conversation was over. It had always been over. I was just the last one to notice. The bed was cold. The mattress too firm. The blankets thin. But it felt honest. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the clink of their plates, their muffled laughter, the sounds of a family, celebrating the end of a war I hadn't realized I'd already lost. That night, while the house slept, I sat up and opened my laptop. No rage, just precision. One by one, I moved through the accounts. College payments, canceled. Insurance, terminated. Car autopay, disabled. Credit cards with authorized users, revoked. Emergency fund, transferred to a private account. Streaming services, phone bills, cloud storage, all in my name, all erased. It was surgical, quiet, a rollback of years. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say a word. I just took back what I had given. Not out of revenge, but out of clarity. If I was nobody, then I would live like nobody. No obligations. No illusions. No more standing in the fire to keep others warm. I shut the laptop and folded the screen down with a soft click. In the morning, I'd be gone. Not with noise. Not with rage. Just gone. And the house would wake up to its reflection. A family without a provider. A table without food. A placeholder removed from the frame. And maybe then, in the absence, they'd finally recognize the shape I once held. Or maybe they wouldn't. Either way, it would no longer matter. I lay in the guest bed with the same stillness I used to envy in corpses. Not moving, not dreaming, not alive in any meaningful way. Just waiting for the dark to pass. It was the same bed her parents used to sleep in when they visited. Her mother once called it, the room for people who don't belong. I thought about that now. She was always sharper than Laura. The hallway outside was quiet. The kids had gone to their rooms, no doubt basking in the afterglow of their triumph. I could almost hear Evan's voice through the drywall. Smug, confident, crowing about how simple it had been to put me in my place. Mia probably laughed. She always laughed when cruelty was casual. She wore her sarcasm like perfume, just strong enough to suffocate the room. And Laura, she probably poured herself a glass of wine and called it peace. She would think of me now the way people think of a retired appliance. It was good while it worked, but nobody repairs those things anymore. By 2 a.m., the house was still. I got up. The carpet was soft under my feet. Everything about this house was soft. The colors, the lighting, the way the walls absorbed noise instead of bouncing it back. A house built to avoid confrontation. A house allergic to memory. I walked past the hallway mirror and caught my reflection. I looked like a tenant, someone visiting. My shoulders rounded, my eyes vacant, my mouth held shut by too many swallowed words. I moved quietly, not to avoid waking them, but because it was instinct. Years of walking lightly in a house where I wasn't allowed to take up space. The laptop sat on the desk in my old office. I hadn't been in there for weeks. Laura told me it made the room feel stuffy, so I stopped using it. Like so many other things, I sat down and logged in. The first screen was the tuition portal. Evans University, a private institution that bled me dry every quarter. The next payment was due in 6 days. $9,327.84. I hovered over the autopay button. A single click. Cancelled. The screen refreshed. Pending 0. I felt nothing. Not relief. Not guilt. Just a clean, quiet subtraction. Then Mia's insurance plan. She was on my policy, the one I paid extra for because Laura insisted Mia needed better options than the state minimum. I had nodded. Of course. Always nodding. Removed. Her coverage would expire at the end of the month. Next, the car. The one Evan drove. My name on the title, my name on the payments, my name on the gas card. He used to fill it up twice a week while blasting music that mocked everything I stood for. I logged into the auto lender site and disabled the automatic withdrawal. Frozen. I didn't stop there. The backup card Mia used for emergencies. Closed. The streaming accounts, all three of them used under my profile, logged out, passwords changed. The shared family cloud drive with hundreds of photos, backed up to a private external, then deleted. The smart thermostat account, reset. The grocery delivery subscription, canceled. The Wi-Fi, scheduled to terminate in 48 hours. It wasn't petty. It was surgical. A clean removal of presence, of contribution, of self. I left Laura's phone line active, not out of sentiment, just logistics. She needed it to call whoever she'd beg next. The last thing I touched was the shared checking account. I transferred the remaining balance, every dollar, to my personal savings. Then I removed myself from the account entirely, left it a hollow shell in her name with no funds and no fallback. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I shut the lid. The silence around me was so full. It buzzed. The kind of silence that comes before a storm, not outside, but in the soul. I stood. My knees ached. My back felt like glass. I wasn't young anymore. That's what made all of this so much worse. I had spent the last decade believing I was laying the bricks of a legacy. That eventually, if I endured enough, if I paid enough, if I gave them a safe enough future, they'd look back and say, "He made this possible. He mattered." But people don't thank you for being the floor they walk on. They replace you when the color doesn't match the new furniture. At 4 a.m., I packed a small bag, just clothes, chargers, ID. A few things I'd paid for that hadn't yet been absorbed into the house. I left my key on the kitchen counter. The same granite slab I'd installed myself when Laura said she wanted to elevate the space. I remembered how my knees bled from kneeling on the tile for hours. Evan had walked past me 3 times, never once asking if I needed help. The front door was quiet when I opened it. The streetlights cast long shadows across the driveway. My car waited at the curb, clean, gassed, ready. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. There was nothing left behind that was mine. Not really. I slid behind the wheel and pulled out slow. The tires whispered against the asphalt. No sound, no ceremony. By the time the sun began bleeding into the horizon, I was 2 towns away. No plan, no destination, just space and silence. My phone vibrated around 10 a.m. I didn't check it. I knew the rhythm by heart. At first, it would be mild. "Where are you?" Then annoyed. "Call me back." Then sharper. "What the hell is wrong with you?" By noon, it would shift. Panic. Desperation. Need. Not for me. For what I carried. For the structure I had upheld. The resources I provided. The convenience I had become. I stopped for gas at a quiet station by the highway. As I stood there watching the numbers climb, my phone lit up again. Laura's name. 10 missed calls. 2 from Evan. 1 from Mia. I turned it face down. The world outside them was bigger than I remembered. Cafe. A refill. Parking lot with a shade tree. I watched people live lives that didn't include me. Couples. Travelers. Strangers. All of them walking with purpose I hadn't felt in years. The messages kept coming. First angry. Then confused. Then begging. I let them roll through like waves over rock. By 4 p.m., Laura sent the first voice message. Her voice was tight, controlled, still performing. "I woke up and you were gone. This is childish. We need to talk. Don't make things worse." It was always like that. Don't make things worse. As if the worst thing in this family wasn't the quiet corrosion. As if my absence was more shocking than their ingratitude. Evan's message came next. "Seriously? You left? What kind of man just bails like that? That's messed up." No ownership. No reflection. Just blame passed like a relay baton. Mia texted once. "Are you kidding me right now? Don't be dramatic. You're making a scene." Making a scene. They could spit in my face and call me a placeholder. But the real crime was choosing to stop funding their comfort. Laura called again. Left a second voice message. This one cracked a little. I could hear it. The first edge of fear. I tried logging into the bank. Everything's frozen. "Did you move the money? What's happening? Call me." The panic was setting in. By nightfall, it would become something else. Something uglier. She would rage. Or she'd cry. Or both. I'd seen it all before. Just never aimed at me. But I wasn't there to absorb it. I was on the edge of a different life. Not better. Not worse. Just honest. By 6 p.m. I checked into a roadside motel. The kind with thin walls and key cards that don't always work on the first try. The bed was stiff. The lamp flickered. The air smelled like bleach. It was perfect. Because it was mine. At 7:03 p.m. a final message came in. It was Laura. Just one line. I know you'll come back. You always do. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I powered the phone off and left it on the nightstand. She was wrong. This time I wasn't coming back. By sunrise, the motel light had turned orange and heavy. The kind of light that doesn't warm, it just reveals. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands on my knees, watching dust drift through a shaft of morning sun like tiny ghosts. They looked like time suspended. They looked like everything I had poured into that house. My phone stayed off. For once, I wanted to give the world time to panic without me. Let them sit in the absence. Let them feel the weight of a silence they helped build. At 9:12 a.m. I turned it on. Just briefly. Messages flooded in, stacked and angry and escalating. Laura, Evan, Mia. Even the school called, not with sympathy, but with confusion. The first tuition payment had bounced. The system flagged it. By midday, I imagined the timeline like a film reel. Laura opening the banking app, expecting the usual comfort. A balance that meant bills were handled and the fridge would restock itself. Then the first pause. The little knot in the chest. She checks the joint account, 0. She checks the secondary card, frozen. She checks the auto drafts, all canceled. And then that moment. The moment every assumption cracks. Not because the house is on fire, but because the fireman is gone. At 12:37 p.m. she left another voice message. Her tone was different now, not anger, not control. Just realization. You took everything. The kids are freaking out. I don't know how to fix this. You have to call me. She still didn't say my name. Not, I miss you. Not, come home. Not, we were wrong. Just the usual instinct, fix this. Because that was always my place in the machine. The man who solved what they broke. The wallet that absorbed mistakes. I turned the phone off again. The motel TV played some sitcom on low volume. Canned laughter. Bright colors. A family solving their differences in 22 minutes. I left it on. I wanted the contrast. By 2 p.m. the tremors must have turned to waves. The tuition office would send a notice of non-payment. They wouldn't call me again. My name had already been removed from that list. The car loan company, their system was automatic. 1 missed payment triggers a warning. 2 flags a repossession. The gas card, frozen. The insurance, closed. Every comfort, every soft cushion of privilege, had evaporated into the shape of my silence. I imagined Evan in his room, pacing, phone in hand, the way he always did when things didn't go his way. The first call would be to Laura, the second to the school. Eventually, the calls would come to me, but by now, even he had to understand. There was no audience anymore. I stayed in the motel another night, not because I had nowhere to go, but because I wanted the world to keep spinning without me. Let them learn what absence really is. The third day was when it shifted. The anger gave way to desperation. At 8:22 a.m. the first message from Evan came in, no caps, no punctuation. You need to pay the school or I'm going to get dropped. Then at 9 a.m. another. They're saying I'm not enrolled anymore. And then, you can't just abandon me. I stared at those last words. Let them sit there. Abandon. A boy who never called me dad. Who called me the guy who lives here. Who told me I was nobody. Now he wanted to use my absence as evidence of injustice. That's the part no one prepares you for. They spit in your face. Then they beg for water. Laura's messages grew longer. Voice notes, mostly. I didn't listen to all of them. Just one. She sounded tired. Not performative. Not rehearsed. I need to know what you're doing. The kids are scared. I'm scared. Mia's car won't start. I can't cover all this. I thought you were the kind of man who... She stopped. Caught herself. I mean, we've built a life together. You can't just pull everything. I don't even know where the papers are for half of this. I almost laughed. The woman who once corrected me for hanging a picture half an inch too low didn't know where the insurance policies were. Because she never needed to. Because I handled everything. Because invisibility was part of the arrangement. Until it wasn't. I checked out of the motel and drove to a small rental 2 counties over. A place I'd secured months ago. Back when the first cracks had begun to show. A backup plan I hoped I'd never need. But now it felt earned. No family photos. No framed memories. Just clean walls. Quiet light. A room with no ghosts in it. That night I ate alone. Chicken. Rice. Silence. No complaints about seasoning. No smirks across the table. No debates about whether I'd earned my place. Just me. Just food. Just peace. Until my phone buzzed again. Mia. I hadn't expected her yet. I thought she'd hold out longer. She was always the coldest. Her message was short. Insurance denied my prescription. Why did you shut it off? Another. You're not even going to respond? That's sick. I stared at the words. Sick. Not unfair. Not surprising. Just sick. As if my refusal to keep funding her life was some act of cruelty. Not boundary. As if I was violating a contract no one had ever signed, but one they'd all expected me to honor forever. That was the moment I knew they hadn't learned. Not really. Not yet. But the learning was coming. By Friday the calls slowed. Not because they gave up, but because they had run out of explanations for what was happening. Evan had gone to Laura's office that morning. I knew because she left a message, whispering. He's angry. I don't know what to tell him. He wants answers and I don't have any. Can you please just explain to him what's happening? Explain, as if words could fill the hole left by a decade of disrespect. I turned the message off halfway through. Let them explain it to each other. Let them stitch together the years of my presence and try to remember where they misplaced their gratitude. The final scene came the next morning. I was eating breakfast, plain toast, black coffee, when Laura sent a photo. It was a screenshot of the car loan account. The overdue balance glared in red. She wrote, "If this gets repossessed, Evan will blame me. Is that what you want?" I didn't reply, because that wasn't the question she should have asked. The right question was, why didn't we think this would happen? The right question was, why did we think he'd stay forever after we treated him like nothing? But those weren't questions they could ask. Because questions like that require something they never had for me. Respect. That evening, she called again. Her voice was low, controlled. "You made your point," she said. "We understand. We crossed a line. I should have said something at dinner. I should have defended you. But don't do this to the kids. They're scared. Evan's future depends on." I ended the call. Not because I didn't want to hear the apology, but because it wasn't one. It was still a request for mercy wrapped in a performance. Not once did she say, "I was wrong." Not once did she say, "You didn't deserve that." She just wanted the money back. Wanted the life back. But that life was built on my shoulders. And my knees had given out. The next day, I filed the paperwork. Formal withdrawal from joint financial accounts. Transfer of vehicle titles. Final notices to all service providers. The only connection left between us was memory. And that, too, was beginning to fade. The silence became permanent. Not deliberate, not strategic, just natural. A vacuum forming where a voice used to live. No more messages from Evan. No more from Mia. Laura sent one final email. Nothing dramatic. Just a list of bank questions she didn't know how to answer. I never responded. I think part of her still believed this was temporary. That I'd cool down. That I'd come home eventually with groceries and apologies in hand. Because that's what I always did. I carried the fallout. I buried the mess. And for years that was the contract. spoken in glances, in bills, in exhausted nods. But not anymore. The house kept spinning without me, just slower, louder, more exposed. Evan's car was repossessed the following week. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because he'd never learned to earn what he'd been given. The dealership called me, assuming there had been a mistake. I told them there wasn't. They thanked me for my clarity. I imagine he walked out to the driveway and found it gone. The car he never thanked me for, never washed, never maintained. Just gone. Mia stopped trying after the insurance lapse. She posted something cryptic online. Some half-clever quote about betrayal and male figures with control issues. I didn't comment. There was no need. People like Mia measure betrayal not by what you do to them, but by what you stop doing for them. She had a few thousand followers who told her she was brave. That was enough for her. Laura, I assume, tried to put things back together. She had always been good at managing appearances. Maybe she told the neighbors I was on a work trip. Maybe she said we were having a rough patch. Maybe she admitted nothing, said nothing, and just smiled tighter each time someone asked. But I know the truth. She didn't miss me. She missed the utility, the payments, the schedules, the comfort of never having to remember how anything worked. There's a quiet kind of humiliation in watching people realize they never learned your value until it was no longer free. A month passed, then another. By the third, I had stopped checking the old voicemail account. I had started walking every morning, cooking meals for one, remembering what my name sounded like in a room with no accusation. Sometimes, late at night, I would catch myself setting 2 plates out. Force of habit. But that faded. Everything fades if you let it. Even the resentment. I saw Laura once by accident. At a pharmacy 2 towns over. She didn't recognize me at first. I'd grown a beard. Lost weight. When our eyes met, she blinked. And for a second I saw her rehearse 100 different greetings in her mind. She settled on, "You look different." I nodded. "I am." She paused, swallowed. "The kids are managing," she said. "It's been hard. Evan had to move back in. Mia's working part-time. Things are tight." I didn't reply. It wasn't a question. She added, "I didn't think you'd actually go." That made me laugh softly without heat. "You all told me I was nobody," I said. "I finally believed you." She didn't deny it, didn't argue, just looked down at her receipt. "I made mistakes," she murmured. "I should have stopped them. I should have." I cut her off gently. "You didn't make a mistake, Laura. You made a choice. You chose comfort over conflict, silence over truth. You raised them to believe I was optional. And now you all get to live with what that means." She nodded slowly. No tears, no outburst. Just a woman realizing the wreckage wasn't theoretical anymore. I said goodbye and left without asking how they were doing. Not because I didn't care, but because it was no longer my role to care. They burned that bridge with their own matches. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd apologized for taking offense. If I'd paid the bills anyway. If I'd said nothing. But then I remember the dinner table. The way Evan didn't flinch. The way Mia smiled. The way Laura agreed. I remember the calmness with which they dismissed me. Not in anger, not in passion, but in utter indifference. That was the truth. The rest was just decoration. There's a story people like to tell about stepfathers. That we sign up for this. That we knew what we were getting into. That we're supposed to love without condition. Give without expectation. Sacrifice without complaint. Because we're not real. We're temporary. Replacements. Men filling a gap until the story makes sense again. And maybe that's true for some. But not for me. I gave them everything. Time. Labor. Money. Presence. I didn't try to replace anyone. I tried to build something new. But you can't build family on a fault line. You can't fill a house with warmth when every wall rejects your breath. And you sure as hell can't force people to see you if they've already decided you're invisible. People ask me now if I regret it. The leaving. The shutting off. The coldness. And my answer is always the same. No. I regret waiting so long. I regret every birthday where I footed the bill and stood in the background while someone else's name got the credit. I regret every night I stayed up late adjusting a budget so Mia could attend a workshop that called me just the ride. I regret every doctor's appointment, every field trip, every favor, every time I sat in the passenger seat of my own life while Laura let the kids believe I was just the staff. Not once did I demand praise, but I earned something: respect, acknowledgement, a place at the table. And when they made it clear I had none of those things, I left. Not out of rage, out of clarity. Love without respect is slavery, and I refuse to be a slave. Now the house is quieter. Not theirs, mine. There are no slamming doors, no eye rolls, no laughter that stings more than silence. Just books, walks, coffee that stays hot, the bed stays made, the fridge stays stocked, the bills stay paid. I live small now, on purpose, not out of lack, but out of peace. And sometimes, when I hear people talk about blended families, about earning your place, I stay silent, because I did. I earned it over and over, and they told me I was still nobody. So now they get to live in the world they built. A world without me. I haven't heard from Evan in 6 months. Mia posted some vague apology online once. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Just one of those pseudo-deep quotes about not realizing what we had until it's gone. I scrolled past it. Laura? She sent a Christmas card. No return address. Just a photo of the 3 of them in front of a different house. Smaller. No lights. Just forced smiles and a dog they didn't have before. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't need to. The image said enough. They were still trying to look like a family, even after all the scaffolding had been stripped away. So now I ask you, the stranger reading this, the one who still believes in second chances, was I wrong? Was I wrong to draw a line after a decade of giving? Was I cruel to demand the bare minimum, respect, before I kept carrying the weight? Was I heartless to leave a family that only saw my value once my absence cost them comfort? You tell me, if you had spent 10 years pouring your soul into a house that kept the door locked behind you, would you have stayed? Or would you have done what I did? Gotten up, walked out, and never looked back?